We are live. Good afternoon, Crystal. How are you?
I'm well, and yourself?
I'm doing great, doing great. Missed you
That's
last week, but we are back in the saddle, ready to rock and roll. I hope you had a good weekend.
I did. The kids are. I was right in the midst of doing biz camp, and my kids had. Uh, I've been every Friday, every week they had a competition. So
Mm,
May was an intense month.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's what happened. That's what was happening to me.
cool beans. Well, we have a pretty interesting topic. For the last few weeks, we've been on this kick about making 401ks better for participants. And just making sure that we understand that many participants aren't going to ever be investment professionals, but they still need to reach their retirement goals. And so, um, taking a look back and focusing on the plan and what the plan and plan sponsor can do to help them along rather than just
hmm
present, right? And today we're going to talk about a little bit of an aspect of that, let's call it that, and that is the fees. And so the title of this one is going to be the most expensive 401k fee is the one that nobody sees. That's kind of cute, I guess.
Kind
So,
of cute.
um, when you get right down to it, most employers know they have to pay their advisors, somebody like myself. Right? You got to pay me.
Mm,
I have to get paid.
this is
And
true.
then most people know that they have to pay the record keeper. That's the the company that actually sends out the statements, and they provide the education from the company. They provide the website, and they provide the charts, and they hold the investments. They are the record keeper, right?
hmm
And then that's where some employers think that's it. That's all I've got to do. They forget to take a look at the investment expense. Every investment has an expense. Every mutual fund company, rather, has a fund manager and a whole team of folks. And so there are expenses there. And if you don't know where to look, that can bite you. And
Mm.
for some, we just have to admit that some people talk about hidden fees. I'm going to bust out and say they're not really hidden fees. They're just fees that aren't disclosed on the statement, for example,
Okay.
or undisclosed, maybe in a presentation, but they're there. You can find them. So I'm thinking of investment expense ratios, right? Um, every mutual fund publishes their expense ratios in their prospectus. Um, but you might not see the revenue sharing between that mutual fund company and the fund.
Mm.
So there's that kind of fee in there too. If you're a participant, you may not see the asset-based compensation that's going to the record keeper, right? So usually the record keeper produces a fee that is um, a fee for holding the investments. That could be a particular fee. And then on top of that, a fee based on the assets in the plan. So you may or may not see that. Um, and also, sometimes, and this is kind of a big ticker, a big thing for a lot of people, many investment houses that are
Mhm.
record keepers have their
Mhm.
own fee, have their own funds, right? So you may have funds at company A, but you may have you may have a record keeper as in company A, right?
Mhm.
But company A has 8 to 10 to 12 to 13 or maybe 30 different mutual fund companies represented on your platform. Does that make sense? I'm trying not to name
Mhm.
names because these folks
Yeah.
aren't paying me to talk about them. Um,
as,
but
as we're speaking about getting paid, huh?
yeah, exactly, exactly. So, so people call those hidden fees, and I'm not so sure that's fair. But in a way, it kind of has to be that way, right? I mean, it is sort of hidden if you don't know about it. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't affect your particular outcome. One
Right.
day we'll go back to, my lesson for how a person ought to choose a fund, to go into their portfolio. So we'll talk about that, and we'll definitely talk about fees there, and we'll definitely talk about what some of those fees mean, and how to navigate that world. Because, as you know, I'm not a fan of target date funds for
Mm-hmm.
everyone, because not everybody looks the same.
Right.
But I'll just put in the kick. If you if you don't want to do it, then target date funds are a great way to go. There are a lot of very, very intelligent people use them, and I don't really have anything against them. I just think that taking care of yourself is a good thing to know. A good thing
Mm.
to. So, one of the things that I wanted to discuss, and I believe I've said this before, is that most people that I talk to say that the lower the price, the better, right? So we always want to race to the bottom. But you know, and I know that lowest price is not always best, and sometimes you get what you pay for, right?
A
And
lot of
sometimes
times.
that price ends up being more expensive. I'll give you a great point. A friend of mine did some moving over the weekend a few weeks back, and she went down to Home Depot and got some quote unquote workers to do the job. She found these folks, and she quoted them one price, and of course they started the job, and by the time she got finished with the job, it cost her twice as much. Whereas, if she'd started out with someone who was quote unquote reputable, paid a
Right.
little bit more upfront, she'd have had a contract for a particular price, and she wouldn't have that, shall we call it, surprise, right?
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. Exactly.
so as far as I know, with the research that I've done, the Department of Labor never ever requires anyone to have the lowest price. And also, as a plan sponsor, you really want to look at what you're getting for the price. You know what I mean? Have you ever experienced something like that?
Um. Yeah. Yeah. Because you're right. If you don't really know, first of all, you're supposed to ask questions. That's first off before you
Yeah,
sign
questions are
paperwork.
good. Questions are good.
Questions are good. Like, okay, so what's this gonna cost me?
Mhm,
Right? It
mhm.
said, okay, so I think, and sometimes that does not happen. People don't ask questions, and then they and turn around and get upset on the back end of it. But you can't, because if you don't just go in and say, okay, I'm setting up your 401k. You have to have meetings with these individuals, right? And lay out the benefits and the purpose and the details and the legalities and the compliance. And so at
One
that
would
point,
hope.
one would hope. I don't think you just go on in there and go, oh yeah, that's a company. I'm just gonna set them up and hope for the best.
And run, yeah. You're spot
Yeah,
on.
no, that's not how that works. They have to sign and they have to be in compliant and they have to
That's
be
true. It is
agreeable.
my job to help them with that, but you're absolutely right.
Right. So
And as
at
far
that
as I
point,
know, what's that?
and at that point, that's when the questions, as you're laying out exactly what it's going to look like before implementation, then okay, and what are the other costs,
Right.
other than the employee
Exactly.
contribution might have, what else am I contributing to this process?
Thank you for saying that. That is exactly right. And even though we do all of that, sometimes we still get surprised, but you're spot on. What is the cost of the employee? What is the cost of the employer? What is the cost? How much is this going to cost me down the road? What happens if I increase my contributions? What happens if the plan grows? We've got a whole litany of things that we go through with that employer to make sure that they're aware of that. And um, I just wanted to say uh, that as much as cost is important, I've never seen the Department of Labor say we have to have the least cost. And getting back to the point that you were just making, the real focus of the plan sponsor ought to be, are the fees I'm paying reasonable for the service and the investments I'm getting?
Mm.
So it doesn't mean cheapest cost, right? Because you may get a better return, but you have to pay a little bit more. And
Oh,
if that better return and you pay a little bit more is worth it, then great. I have to throw in one more story. When I first got in the business, I worked at a company that was known to have very inexpensive funds.
Mm.
And I told a friend of mine who worked at a wealth management shop, I said to her, you should use this company's funds because they're dramatically less expensive than most funds on the market. And she looked at me and she said, Jevon, the people that invest with me don't care about fees. They want the return. She said, we're making so much money for these folks that even if we charge dramatically more than the fees that you have, we're still making money for our clients.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, how about that? There you go. There you go. So,
But that is true, right? If well, first of all, we know that generally this is set. He's had there. The employer is setting this up for his behalf primarily, right?
yep.
And then, but he has legally have to take the employees along with him for the ride.
Mhm.
so,
Yes.
so at
Yes.
that point, it's really more about him, I think, than it is
And small plans, often
small
so.
plans, right? It's more about him, and so if you have trust in and the reputation to do the job that you assign yourself to, then yeah, because it's about your retirement, and depending on where you are in that timeline, as we've spoken on many occasions, right? If you're on the back end and you only have a short period of time to accumulate what you got to accumulate, then you don't have a lot of choice there. But if you started at 18, 19, yeah,
Oh,
now we can have some conversation, right?
yeah. Now you're talking a lingo. If I can get you in your 18, your teens or your 20s, oh my goodness, we can set things up for you. But that is what it is. Um, Going back to what the employer can do to help, because they can't. You can lead a horse to water, right? So
Exactly.
helping that employer lead those employees to water by having a solid plan that is reasonable is super important. I got to throw our clips in. So clip number one is opt in the most expensive fee is not the one that you see. So going back to the expense ratio, revenue sharing, asset based compensation, those kinds of fees. That's clip number one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Clip number two, cheap is not the standard, right? You don't have to have the cheapest plan. You need to have process. Process. That is the deal. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and suggest that the Department of Labor wants you to have a plan that's appropriate. And then here's the most important part. And I don't know if this is clip number three, but I'm going to say it is. Clip number three is documentation. That is the deal. Do you have a process, and is that process documented? If you have that, you're in most situations that I know of that come before the Department of Labor where there are lawsuits.
Mm-hmm.
In most of
Mm-hmm.
those situations, having a process that is documented, key words, process documented,
Mm-hmm.
that's what the employer needs. That's how
Right.
you fulfill your fiduciary responsibility. Not the cheapest plan, because cheap plans don't always produce results. They don't always produce returns. If you
Right.
have a plan that's very inexpensive, but nobody's making any money in it because the investments suck, this is not good. That's a technical term, investment.
Suck
Yeah.
that part. I think I've heard that somewhere.
Mhm. Yeah,
Wall
investment.
Street Journal. I've heard that word.
Yeah, they quote me. Yeah. So, so the real issue is for employers is to make sure you have a process.
Mm-hmm.
That's most important. And then I'm going to suggest make sure you have a documented process. So for that clip number 3, 4, document your process. And I'm running into a situation now where the employer doesn't know what to do with some assets. And so
Mm-hmm.
they've come to their advisor. They went to the record keeper, they got no help. They went to their advisor, they got no help. They come to me, and I'm saying, document your process for what you did to find out what to do with these assets and to be a prudent steward,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if you don't, now the Department of Labor can say you did nothing for all these years. That's not acting in the best interest of those participants, which is the real key.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
So they had not done that.
They had not done that.
Ooh.
Yeah. So that's that. So going back to the expense of the plan, many times a plan sponsor will say something like, "My advisor told me the plan is free." That is the biggest, hugest lie I've ever heard. I'm just going to go right out here and say that. Nothing, nobody, nowhere works for free. It don't happen. Not in this world. It's not. It's just.
Oh,
It's
I
not
believe
that.
it's illegal.
Maybe, but there's a there. You got to pay. My father used to tell me you have to count the cost. There are
You
costs.
do.
There will always be costs.
They will always be cost.
Yeah. So, anytime if you're a plan sponsor and you hear that advisors say this plan is free, run, run, just get out of there. It's not good.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
so after all that ranting and raving, I guess let's bring this to a, a nice conclusion. So number one, the goal is not a free plan. That's not the goal. The goal is not the cheapest plan. No, the goal is to have a well-governed plan that's
Mm,
reasonable, has
mhm,
thoughtful oversight, and has a
mhm.
documented process so that participants can have the outcomes they need to reach their retirement goal. That's the key. A well-governed plan,
Mhm.
reasonable fees, with thoughtful oversight slash stewardship, and a documented process for doing everything in that plan and better participant outcomes. That's where we're at. That's what we do that's what our job is. That's what our job is in the business. That's what the job of the employer is with regard to that retirement plan.
Okay.
You know what? I didn't even read your bio. I got so excited about all of this that I didn't read your
Well,
bio. And you know what?
before,
I don't even have it hear me. It's like over
but that's
there.
okay. Don't worry. I tell you who I am. But before you do that, I was reading an interesting article the other day. That it was a retiree who thought they had saved quite an enough for their retirement, which they did because they chose to leave the country. So that
Yeah.
then they were having a conversation, he and I guess some other retirees that relocated to outside of the United States. And they were having, he said, an honest conversation. And he was like, I can never go back there because his retirement plan or his investment funds were fine where he was, but because of the cost of living here, he had already sold his home. He had given
Mm.
up his car. Um, he's been gone for quite a long time. So trying to find another job, an apartment, whatever that
Oh,
was going to be far more than he could actually invest in. And now he had a wife that he was bringing from the other country. So that's a thought process, right? You make a change, and if you want to come back, then it's not like you left. Let's say you left 10 years ago. You can't come back. And yeah, living outside of the country is much cheaper. So yeah, um you do have your money goes much further, but it can't go further enough to get you back to the country that you were born in. Isn't that a thought?
that's a really good point. Every year I get these articles and list of great places for retirees to retire. And some of them are dramatically less expensive than living here in the US. And so it
Right.
is very tempting to make money here essentially in the US and then spend it in a place that's less expensive. I get that. It's very tempting. But you are absolutely right. And we don't even have to go far afield, right? Once with that to realize what happens when you leave and try to come back. Right here in
Mm-hmm.
California, if you buy your house here in California and you make payments on it, um, you want to think twice about selling that house because if you come back, the chances you're going to buy that house at what you sold it for, pretty slim. The chances you're going to buy that house for what you bought it for, oh, that's just not happening. So you really do have to think long and hard about that. I really appreciate you bringing that up. We'll have to have a show about that. um, when you make that decision, uh, you you're making that decision, and sometimes for the rest of your life. On the other hand, I would say
Mm-hmm.
if your money's going to go farther, we do have phones here. You can't get your monies that are inside your IRA in Bora Bora or wherever it
Right,
is that
right,
you're in, right?
exactly.
So sometimes it makes a lot of sense to consider moving to a place that's dramatically less expensive, knowing, yeah, I'm not coming back.
Yeah, you got you. It has to be a. You got to do. That's one of those comparisons, right? And then in your circumstances as well. If you don't have any family here, no grandchildren, no anybody, whatever, whatever. Yeah, you probably is like, okay, I can cut the ties. But for all of the problems that the United States has, there are certain luxuries that we don't even know is a luxury until we leave this country. Eh,
Yes, we do have this whole God-given rights things, these whole inalienable and people are free concepts that are not necessarily universal,
No.
and we do have to be aware of those. And we have lots of soldiers, men and women, who have fought and died and continue to fight and die for those freedoms. So they
Mhm.
should not be taken lightly because they are not free. There is a
Mhm.
lot of blood spilled and a lot of heart pouring to make sure that we can live the lives that we can. And I salute that. I think it is something we have to take stock in and remember.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
would also say that if you are at that point where you're thinking that retirement thing is going to be tough here in Cali, ooh, it's going to be tough here in Cali. Maybe I need to move to, I don't know, some other place
Yeah, you
here.
could move to other states or but
Sure.
there's some give and take. I think everyone that would have to just understand that they have to do their research, thorough research. Don't just,
Yeah,
because
and I would
and
say
the
you don't have to be alone. Your financial advisor will help you.
right,
Uh,
exactly.
they're still going to get the same amount of money whether you move to Bora Bora or you stay here. So they will help you move out of the country, out of the state, out of the
Right,
neighborhood.
right, exactly.
They'll help you,
All right.
and so there's some resources out there. So if you're having an issue with that, um, then by all means reach out to your financial advisor. You can reach out to me if you'd like. You can reach out to Crystal. She'll have you call me, but you can reach
Mhm.
out to us. And then I would also say, when it comes to your 401k plan, if you are wondering what your job as a plan sponsor is, if this has just touched you, then most definitely reach out to your advisor and say to them, hey, I don't want the cheapest plan. I want the best plan that I can provide for my participants. How do I do that? And
Yeah.
and please, please, please get a process and document it for everything you do in the plan.
Quite agree. I don't think in any case actually the cheapest is the better. There's
Yeah,
a reason why it's the cheapest. So,
yeah,
so just
yes,
right. There's a
yeah.
reason why. So I don't think that really people think it does, but I don't think it really ever applies to anything. I think you get the best you seek out the best that works for your current situation.
Crystal, it's usually during this part of the broadcast that I read your bio and I let you have the last word. But I think you just did it. I'm not going to top that. I think uh, I think that's great. So we're going to let it
Okay.
go right there.
All
And
right.
next time we do this broadcast, I'll have your bio so that I can read it to
Okay.
people.
You guys can go back to another issue and tell you all about who I am. But anyway,
There you go.
I'm Krista
There you
Mitchell.
go.
It says it right there, business coach and consultant,
Yeah.
and glad to be
Well,
here.
nice. Well, everyone, you've been listening to On the Patio with my colleague Crystal Mitchell and myself, Jevon Thomas. I'm a licensed retirement plan advisor. And Crystal, who are you?
I am Krista Mitchell. I'm a business coach
Crystal's a
and
business coach and
consultant.
consultant.
Yeah, I work in the financial small business capacity, making sure our business owners are business ready, bank loan ready, and contract ready. That's kind of what I do.
Cool.
And I have some
On
children
the
that I
spot,
teach how
ladies
to
and
read.
gentlemen.
Uh, yes,
Nice.
that's what I do.
Nice. All right. Well, it's always a pleasure, ma'am. Always a pleasure, and we will see all of y'all next time on the patio with
All
Crystal and
right. Bye
Jevon.
bye, everyone. Good to see you. Have a great weekend.